Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto and Kaguya Percy Jackson. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by TheMagicManWithThePlan and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto had two things going for him currently. 1. He was still alive. 2. So was Kurama. That should have been all he was worrying about currently. Unfortunately, he had a multitude of things that were going wrong currently. 1. He didn't know where he was. 2. He was hungry. 3. He was sore. 4. Kurama was now 8 inches tall and on his shoulder, really useful. 5. He was completely drained of chakra from his last fight. 6. Possibly the worst thing in his large list of problems. Princess Kagaya was not dead. Terrible news, but it gets worse. The all-knowing god and giver of chakra seemed to be a little girl. Naruto wasn't the smartest kunai in the pouch. Zing. But he knew that this wasn't going to turn out too good. He took a step toward the young girl and she inched back in distrust. Why didn't she trust him? What did he do to her? Besides try and kill her? Well, that's one question answered. Is that Kagaya? Kurama asked. His voice was a much higher pitch due to him being so small. Something Naruto noticed almost instantly. You sound like a squeaky toy. Kurama reacted by latching onto Naruto's ear with his jaw. Ah. Let go, I was kidding. They heard a soft giggle in front of them. It seemed the young Princess Kagaya was laughing. Kurama stopped assaulting Naruto's ear to see if his eyes were deceiving him. They were not. This seemed to be an interesting development. Naruto took another step forward, but the young girl would have none of that and took another tentative 2 steps back. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Naruto said. Naruto, can I have a word with you? Kurama asked. Let me do this first, Kurama. The small fox looked at Naruto for a second before nodding his head in recognition. Do you know your name? Naruto asked the young girl while inching forward. The young girl nodded her head. It's Princess Kagaya, right? Naruto asked. She nodded in confirmation. Things seemed to be going in a weird direction currently. Naruto had absolutely no idea what to do at this point. He was originally supposed to whoop her ass and make her undo all the damage she had done prior, but now she was a little girl. Would it be immoral to beat a little girl to near death? He didn't know. Don't worry, Kagaya-chan. I won't hurt you. Naruto said while lowering himself down to her level. His eyesight seemed to be quite poor in the dark, but now that he was closer to her, he could make out her more defining features. She wore a hime kimono that differed slightly to the one she had when she was a full-blown god. This one had absolutely no designs on it whatsoever, but still remained white. She still had her Byakugan, and her third eye was closed, leaving a vertical slit in its place. 2 horns protruded from her head and her long white hair easily reached the ground. She seemed to be under 4 feet in height, making her seem defenseless. She looked Naruto in the eyes, as if trying to tell if he was telling the truth or not. Seeing no reason not to trust the dopey-looking blonde who only seemed to wear orange and black, she walked toward him. She held her hand out, hoping to be lifted up. Naruto did just that. He picked the small girl up into his arms and stood up once again. Now to figure out where I am. Naruto said aloud to himself. Do you remember what happened? Kurama asked. Nope. I think I'll just follow these white line things. Naruto said, deciding this was going to have to be his game plan for now. Is this some kind of road? Kurama asked. Kagaya decided at that exact moment that the young fox was cute and needed attention, so she grabbed onto the fox's ear. Hard. Ow. Kurama let out in pain. Kagaya flinched in fear and hid herself by burying her face into Naruto's chest. Hey, be nice to her, Kurama. Naruto said, still trying to figure out where he was going. But. She's just a kid. Traitor, Kurama mumbled to himself. He decided he would entertain himself by trying to figure out what they were walking on. It couldn't be a road, there wasn't any dirt. It was just concrete. Who would want to roll a wagon on concrete? They were so distracted they didn't notice the bright lights coming in from behind him. Naruto was hit pretty hard from the back, sending him flying. It wasn't the hardest hit he'd ever taken, but it hurt pretty bad. His main priority was to make sure that Princess Kagaya was safe. He skidded across the concrete ground, making sure to keep his back to the ground so as to not let Kagaya get hurt. Kurama didn't fare so well, seeing as he flew a bit farther and landed face first into the concrete, skidding with his face. Soon their momentum halted and Naruto slowly got up while holding the now shivering princess in his arms. You alright, Kagaya-chan? Naruto asked. She was too scared to answer, so Naruto would just have to wait for her to calm down. What about me, you brat? Kurama yelled from across the concrete road. Stop being a whiny baby. Naruto yelled back to the downed fox. I'm so sorry. Came the shout of an older woman with brown curly hair. Any other features couldn't be made out due to the fact her head was hanging out of what seemed to be a metal box on wheels. "Am I under attack, Kurama?" Naruto asked. Kurama, who had found his way back onto his partner's shoulders, had no idea how to respond to that. The woman's head went back into the box and she drove around, obviously in such a big hurry that she didn't even really notice that Naruto was unharmed. "How's Kagaya Haim?" Kurama asked as he watched the box thing go around them. "I don't know. Are you feeling better, Kagaya-chan?" Naruto asked as nicely as he possibly could. She nodded her head. "Well, I don't know about you, Kurama, but I have absolutely no idea what happened just now. You were clearly attacked." "You think so?" Naruto asked. "Definitely." It seemed he was now at war with box people that had bright lights. He was unsure on what he did to garner their hatred of him, but he was lucky he was attacked by what seemed to be the more understanding of this clearly alien species. "Follow the car," a voice rung inside his head. Naruto was somewhat startled by it. The voice seemed feminine in nature and he felt deep down inside of himself that this voice was obviously a part of the indigenous species and was not to be trusted. "Alright, strange voice, give me one good reason why I should follow that." "Car." Naruto thought. "Trust me." Naruto had this odd feeling inside his stomach like the voice could be trusted. Like he knew it from somewhere. But the thought soon passed as he realized that the feeling wasn't trust, but hunger. "I'm going to go ahead and not trust you," Naruto thought to the voice. He was going to have to figure out what to do in this situation now. He could probably abduct one of these car people and aggressively convince them to help him out. He wouldn't say torture because good guys just aggressively interrogated. There was a difference. "Don't do that," the voice said, clearly reading Naruto's thoughts. So now the voice thought she could tell him what to do. Now they had a problem. "I'm your mother," the voice said at last. Naruto's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing on the concrete road. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I don't like it," Naruto responded, not appreciating this voice's sense of humor. "It's not a game. I'm Kushina." "Sort of." To say Naruto was shocked would be an understatement. This voice obviously knew about his past. He would have to be careful. "I really am your mother," the voice said, beginning to get annoyed. And now she was angry. Obviously this voice wasn't too good at keeping her temper in check. Obviously she was mad at herself for lying to him. "I'm not lying." Typical liar. Never admits to lying, but everyone knew the truth. To make matters worse, she wasn't even any good at it. He shook his head in disappointment. "Would you stop mocking me?" Now the obviously lying and evil voice thought everything was about her. Here he was, completely lost. "If you would follow the car like I'm telling you to, then you wouldn't be lost." And she was rude. Completely cut him off from his train of thought. "Alright, voice inside of my head. What do I find following that car?" Naruto thought. "Safety," she answered vaguely. "Kurama, there's a voice inside my head and it's telling me to follow the car that just hit us," Naruto told the fox. "That thing's called a car?" "I guess." "Why does she want you to follow the car?" Kurama asked. "She just told me it was for safety," Naruto answered. "The vague don't trust it." "Okay. Are you serious? Tell the Kyuubi that it's Kushina," the voice demanded. "She says that she's Kushina. And she's a liar. Definitely don't trust her now. Instead we should track down one of these cars and aggressively interrogate it." "That's what I was saying, Dadabeo. Would you just trust me this once?" Now the voice was shouting. Clearly it was a voice belonging to somebody who couldn't properly control their emotions. Maybe Naruto could offer this voice some help and a little advice so as. "Look Naruto, I don't know why you're doing this, but if you can't trust me, then let me prove it to you." "Prove away," Naruto responded. "Your father's name was Namikaze Minato. I was a Jinchuriki to the nine-tailed demon fox and died when Madara attacked the village 16 years ago." Obviously this voice wasn't in the loop because everyone knew that if she was really his mother, then she would know what her own favorite food was. "Salt ramen. Oh my god, it's really you." Naruto then promptly fell on his butt, shocking both Kurama and Kagaya in the process. "Now will you follow that car?" the voice asked. What a caring voice. It obviously had his best intentions at heart and loved him deeply. He would follow this voice to the ends of the earth. Sigh. Naruto then began to run. The car had about a 20-minute lead on him. So he was going to have to go fast. He took off into a dead sprint. It wouldn't take him too long to catch up to this car creature if the speed that the thing took off at was any indication. He should catch up to it pretty soon. All he had to do was follow the road till he reached it. Hopefully there were no turns that would make him choose which way to go. Luck was on his side because after about 3 minutes of sprinting and he assumed quite a few miles gained, he reached the car. It was dead. "Now what voice?" Naruto asked. "There were people inside of that car. Find their scent and follow it," the voice explained. Naruto took a whiff of the air around the car, now clearly telling that she was indeed right. There were people in the car at one point. Now he just had to find the trail. He sniffed around for a bit, finding what he was looking for. He then took off. Didn't take him long to reach a hill, which he decided to scale as quickly as possible. Once he reached the top, he saw what seemed to be some kind of sign thing that wasn't in a language that he knew of but could read for some odd reason. Half-blood. You can read that thing? Kurama asked. The day's been really confusing. Let's just go with it. I guess. Kurama responded. See what happens when you listen to my advice? The voice asked. Thanks. Now look for a man called Chiron. He should be able to help you get settled in. But you won't be able to bring your friends. I retract my thank you. I'm sorry Naruto, but those two can't get through the gate. The voice told him. Naruto did not heed her warning and tried to walk through anyway. When he did, he was successful. How is that possible? Oh no. I'm going to find this Chiron guy now. The voice disappeared. Thank goodness. It was getting annoying. Horseman Naruto couldn't really compare it to anything he knew in the elemental nations. Sure, there were horses and there were men. But horsemen? None that he was aware of. It didn't even make sense. A horse and a man. Why would you want to be both? How were you supposed to run through trees or hang out in a raiment stand with half of a horse's body? Of course it was possible. But was it really necessary? To put so much effort into getting into a raiment stand? Naruto would do anything to get ramen. But would he do that? Kurama looked at Naruto and shook his head. It seemed the mere sight of Chiron had shut Naruto's mental functions down. Who knew what was going on inside that brat's head? What is ramen to me really? Is it life? Or is it pure happiness? What is happiness exactly? Is he alright? Chiron asked. He'd only just introduced himself and the blonde-haired boy seemed to completely shut down, staring off into space. He'll be fine, just let him finish. Kurama said. At this point Kagaya had fallen asleep. Being hit by a car and crying for who knows how long would do that to a little girl. Even if said little girl could snap this reality in half on a whim. Is there a god? So you helped these two reach camp? Chiron thought it odd. A young boy by the name of Percy and his best friend Grover had already reached camp just an hour ago. Now two more children. And a talking fox with 9 tails. Had made it too. They seemed very exotic. The young man seemed to be in his mid-teens, whisker marks adorning his face. His eyes were a soul-piercing blue and his head held a mat of spiky blonde hair. The young man wore what seemed to be a black and orange tracksuit and blue sandals. His forehead was protected by some kind of metallic headband with a marking in the center that reminded Chiron of a leaf. Then there was the young girl. She seemed to be barely at the age to go to school. From what Chiron could tell, the young girl was blind and had some kind of odd scar on her forehead. She wore a large white dress. And had long flowing white hair. Her eyebrows were cut rather short, as if they were dots. Let's not forget that she also had 2 horns on her head. How odd. B equals MC2. Nice to meet you, old man Chiron. The name's Naruto Uzumaki. Don't you forget it, Dadabayo. Naruto introduced, holding his fist out to bump. Surprised by Naruto's sudden face heel turn, all the centaur could do was bump fists back, unsure why a young man his age would think it appropriate to introduce himself in such a manner. And the fact the boy had the audacity to call him an old man, no matter how true it might have been, had made the wizened centaur realize that Naruto needed an attitude adjustment. And possibly antipsychotics. Well, Mr. Uzumaki. Would you care to follow me? Naruto looked over his shoulder at his foxy friend for help in the situation. He was beginning to doubt the voice in his head that had conveniently disappeared just recently. Maybe he was sent here to be eaten or sacrificed. Sacrificed to whatever sick gods they may have here. The thought terrified him. Follow him, you brat. Kurama shouted. Who are you calling a brat? Naruto shouted back. The two glared at each other, daring the fight to continue onward. Please. Chiron called out pleadingly. Naruto sighed. Okay. But if I die, I swear to God I'll haunt you, Kurama. If you die, what chance do you think I'll have? Naruto huffed and followed the horseman. So Naruto, how much knowledge do you have of Greek mythology? Chiron asked. Unless Greek is a fancy word for ramen, then I ain't got a clue. Naruto said simply. Chiron looked surprised at that. The boy must have been severely uneducated to not even know the term Greek. Hercules slaying the Hydra. Zeus defeating the Titans. Hades ruler of the underworld. Poseidon god of the sea. Any of this ringing a bell for you? Chiron asked, completely bewildered. Naruto shook his head. His heart began to beat even faster. These people were going to eat him. Sacrifice him to whatever messed up gods these crazy people had come up with, and he was going to be their sacrifice. Was this all part of the plan? They're in no danger. The voice said, returning to calm Naruto down. He was so dead unless he could trick them. Maybe a Rasengan could convince them that he was in fact one of their gods in human form. Then he could tell them not to eat him and he could make a run for it. But what if that didn't work? Then he'd still run for it. "You're not even listening, are you?" The voice shouted angrily. And now she was angry again. What was with this voice's bipolarness? It didn't make any sense on why this voice, who claimed to be his mom, couldn't keep her emotions in check. "I'm done. Tell us about the gods, Chiron-san." Kurama started. "Sure thing. Kurama. Kurama. Well, it all started." Naruto sighed as he sat in his bed, Kagaya playing patty cake with him as he thought. She was a 6-year-old girl, but had the mentality of a 2-year-old it seemed. He doubted she would even be able to feed herself. To think someone so incapable could turn out to be a god. Naruto was rather surprised at Camp Half-Blood. It seemed pretty interesting to say the least. He saw many new things as he explored the campgrounds. He learned about satyrs and dryads, both of which seemed incredibly cool. "If you keep babying her like that, she'll never survive. You know that, right?" Naruto stopped the game of patty cake, much to the disappointment of Kagaya, and looked over to the bed next to him. The young boy sat there. He was close to Naruto's age, having black hair and tanned skin. Somewhat like Octopop's but slightly lighter. "Chris Rodriguez, just trying to give you a hint." He seemed nice enough, but Naruto was slightly agitated by the young man's advice. Maybe it was his newfound affection for the young Kagaya that made him this way. "Thanks, but she'll be fine, Tebane," Naruto said cheerily. No point letting it go to his head. "What's your name, kid?" Chris asked. "Who are you calling a kid?" Naruto all but shouted. "He fought in a war, goddammit." Sorry, but really, what's your name?" Chris asked again. "Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto shouted happily. Kagaya made wild gestures, attempting to get Naruto's attention. It seemed she could understand language, but she couldn't formulate words just yet. Or maybe she just didn't want to. Naruto honestly cared either way. And this Naruto started, picking the little girl up and placing him onto his lap. "This Princess Kagaya," Naruto said happily. "A princess, huh? What a pretty princess," Chris said cheerily. He smiled at the young girl and she began to giggle happily. Naruto's opinion of the boy changed instantly. He was alright in his book. "So Naruto, do you know how to fight?" Chris asked. Naruto's grin nearly split his face. Could he fight? Of course he could fight. He was one of the strongest guys he knew. "Yup. I love fighting," Naruto said happily. "Well, maybe you're the son of Ares." Chris pondered. "Ares?" Naruto asked. "Ares, the god of war." Naruto gulped. He really hoped he wasn't the son of someone like that. Naruto loved to fight, but war and death disgusted him. Or maybe not. "You seem to be too nice to go to that cabin." Naruto smiled at that. "Hey, is that the new kid?" someone asked. The boy who asked seemed to be slightly older looking than Naruto, sporting scruffy blonde hair, an athletic build, blue eyes and a way about him that read fun and sneaky. "Luke Castellan. You must be Naruto Uzumaki," the boy said cheerily. "That's me," Naruto said happily. "And is this Kagaya?" Luke asked. She frowned at him. "It's Princess Kagaya," Chris stressed. "The princess. It's an honor." Luke bowed to the young girl. She smiled at him. "So Naruto, any theories on who your godly parent might be?" Chris asked. "Not a clue. Actually, I don't know any of the gods, so I might need some brushing up." "Well, it's a little late for that, so I guess we can do it tomorrow at some point. But we need sleep for now," Luke advised. Naruto was currently eating breakfast with Cabin Hermes, who in his opinion, was the coolest cabin on Earth. He had Kagaya sitting in his lap, spoon-feeding her. Another thing he learned Kagaya was no good at was feeding herself. She was completely incapable of doing it. She just made a huge mess. Now Naruto was in charge of it. "Say Aya. Aya," she let out. He placed a spoonful of cereal into her mouth. Or should he call them pencil shavings? The only food that they had on campus was military-grade horse crap. He wasn't going to be eating any of it. He was going to make a petition to have ramen on their menu. Soon breakfast was finished and it was time to train. Finally. Luke wanted to see what Naruto could do, so he went into the fields with him, holding 2 swords. He must have been very skilled. There were many people in the fields practicing their sword technique. Naruto was impressed and yet at the same time, a little underwhelmed. They weren't very strong at all. He was hoping Luke was stronger than them. Kagaya followed close behind. "Here," Luke said suddenly, tossing a sword to Naruto. Naruto caught it quite simply, but it was obvious that he'd never held a weapon like that before. He was about to get ready to fight when he heard a startled gasp behind him. Kagaya had been knocked over and stepped on. Kagaya seemed too frightened to do anything but stare up at the tall girl who had knocked her over. Luke looked slightly frightened. "Kagaya. Come here please." he called out. Looks like we've got ourselves a chicken. The girl said mockingly. Fear welled up in Kagaya's eyes. The giggle left Naruto's mouth, but he held it in. What's so funny, Blondie? The girl asked. Kagaya had already gotten up and hid behind her protector Naruto. Nothing Naruto attempted to hold in. Well, obviously we've got a problem. With a newbie, no doubt. Clarisse said, getting into the young man's face. She was slightly taller, which intimidated him ever so slightly. The girl was rather tall. She had long, stringy light brown hair, pig-like brown eyes and was strong-looking. The people who were previously fighting had all stopped to see what was going on. You know what we do with newbies like you? The girl asked. No. Naruto asked. We break them. She took a step back, taking a battle stance. Don't make a scene. The voice in his head warned. I'm sorry, did I just ear whoop her ass? Naruto threw the floor onto the ground and smiled. His smile quickly turned from goofy to psychotic. He ran at her, making her chuckle. She thrust her spear at Naruto, who made no attempt to dodge. He slammed his head into the sharp point of the spear and lost no momentum due to the fact the spear snapped in half. What happened next could only be described as the worst beating in the camp's history. Naruto punched her in the stomach and began to lay into her with his fists. His hands were blurs as fist marks began to cover her body faster than people could see. Then came the uppercut. There was so much force behind the punch that it lifted the girl off of her feet and sent her flying a good 5 feet away. She rolled on the ground, completely unconscious. Naruto's smile turned into a frown. That was crap Konohamaru could keep up with. He was incredibly disappointed. The symbol appeared above his head depicting an owl, an olive tree and a snake. Maybe he should have held back on the showing off part. Cabin Athena. It was a cabin he could imagine people like Shikamaru living in. If Shikamaru was a nerd. Which he was not. And neither was Naruto. So he didn't quite understand why he had to be a resident of the cabin. And he sure didn't understand how he was even slightly related to the annoying little girl, sending a glare at him while crossing her arms in front of him. She's not allowed to stay here. The annoying little girl said. Annabeth Chase. He could see some family resemblance, and by some, just one. They both had blonde hair. But that was where the buck stopped. She seemed to have an air about her that read superior. She was scowling at him. Why was she glaring at him? He wasn't quite sure. It might have been the fact that he called the cabin a bunch of nerds. Or the fact that he gave Malcolm a wedgie just because he could. Maybe he shouldn't have given Malcolm a wedgie, but he probably deserved it. For doing what? He would think of something. What's going to happen? Athena's gonna zap me with lightning. It thundered above, causing Annabeth's eyes to widen. He'd angered Zeus. What are you doing, you fool? Annabeth shouted. Relax. Here, I've got an idea. I'll just take Princess Kagaya into the cabin. No. Annabeth said, standing in front of the entrance of the cabin. What? Annabeth sighed. It wasn't like she didn't want to let the young girl stay in the cabin, but it would be an insult to her mother. The only god that allowed things of that nature was Hermes. I'm sorry. Annabeth said, looking up at Naruto, right in the eyes. Well, if she can't stay in Athena's cabin, then I won't either. Naruto said forcefully. Naruto, you're being difficult. I'll make sure Ms. Kagaya will be taken care of in Hermes' cabin. Chiron attempted to calm Naruto down. Obviously it wasn't about to work. A small crowd had formed because of all the commotion. No way. I'm sticking to my guns. What's with all the commotion? Came a voice. Naruto looked over at what seemed to be people scattering to get out of the way to avoid what seemed to be an alcoholic. Nothing to worry about, Mr. D, I'm just clearing. Yeah, we've got a problem. I'm being told I can't stay with Kagaya-chan just cause some god said no. If they were in a cartoon, he would have heard a gasp, but he wasn't, so people's eyes just widened. Just some god, you say? Naruto looked at the god with determination. Nobody was going to keep him from staying with Kagaya. You're Naruto Uzumaki, right? Athena's kid? Mr. D asked. Naruto didn't respond. Hey, voice inside my head. If you really are this Athena chick, it would be really helpful if you could lend me a hand, Naruto thought inside his head. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I cannot accept a child that is not mine. Athena said, trying to sound as unconfrontational as she could. Wait, you do know who this is, right? Does her status hold some importance? Athena asked. It seemed things have become 1,000 times more complicated. Naruto. Don't ignore Mr. D, Chiron chastised. Princess Kagaya. The creator of chakra. You're the god of being smart and stuff, right? Naruto asked, almost mockingly. Creator of chakra. How strong would she fare against someone like your father Minato? Assuming you have witnessed him in combat before. Athena asked. Well, I'm going to answer that with another question. How strong were you compared to Tusan? Naruto asked. He was the only human to have bested me in combat. His ability in the Harashin and his battle wisdom were almost godlike. Athena said, almost dreamily. It seemed Athena was an in-the-closet fangirl. Naruto sighed internally. It seemed she wasn't as knowledgeable about the elemental nations as he had originally thought. You're going to get a kick out of this. The minute had pasted since Naruto had disengaged himself from his conversation on the outside world and had become completely unresponsive. Things were said. Probably not nice things. And Kagaya was getting nervous. She didn't like all the attention she was getting, from her horns to her long white hair. Now she had caused Naruto to make a scene. It was making her so scared and mad that she would probably end up sucking all of the chakra from all living being on the planet, make an army of white Zetsus, and bring peace through force. What a random thought. She pondered the meaning of such a thought. Don't ignore me, boy. Mr. D said, reaching out in hopes of getting the boy's attention again. Everyone was mildly surprised when Athena's crest appeared over the head of Kagaya very suddenly. It was as if it was rushed over her head at the last second. Mr. D sighed. This punishment crap was going to be the end of him. Well, that fixes everything. To our new cabin, Kagaya-chan. Naruto sat on his new and comfortable bed. He could get used to this kind of comfort. But the color scheme would have to be changed. You're right. The colors will have to be changed. Kurama shouted from atop Naruto's head. Naruto jumped back in surprise. Kurama had disappeared earlier that day to do whatever tailed beasts did in their off time. He assumed. Kurama's return was quite surprising. What the hell, you dumb fox? Naruto shouted. Oh, relax. I went to go scouting mission. Kurama said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Do you even know how to scout? Naruto asked, scoffing at the idea that Kurama would even make an attempt. What do you take me for? I'm a fox. Oh, and I got you a present. Kurama said happily. What'd you get me? Naruto asked excitedly. Kagaya was excited as well. Nemean lion. Came a shout from outside of the tent. Mass panic and screaming followed. Its name is Mizo. Kurama shouted. Naruto shook his head. It seemed Kurama had thought panic was a gift the whole family could enjoy. God damn it, Kurama. Things were not looking well for Athena. Zeus's lightning bolt had been stolen recently, which would possibly bring the gods to war. She had no clue who had taken it, but she doubted it was the one being accused. But she wouldn't dismiss it. The mere idea that a war could start over something that to anyone else would seem trivial. She didn't know what to make of the situation. Now she had just found out that the little girl that Naruto had taken with him from the elemental nations was so powerful that she could simply think away things that Hera in most cases would deem strong. From what she heard from Naruto, this Princess Kagaya would destroy not only all life on Earth, but would rip the gods apart, destroy the heavens, and claim her place as queen of the world. The only thing stopping her from losing her mind and doing such a thing was Naruto. She was just glad that the young girl wasn't a demigod like she originally theorized. Now she would get no backlash from anyone who would like to claim the young goddess. When she was masquerading in the elemental nations as Kushina Uzumaki, she had learned just how much potential humans had. Minato Namikaze especially. She was physically stronger than him and was 100 times more intelligent. But his mind was somehow able to move faster. It reacted more readily and thrived in conflict. His imagination and creativity were superior to her own. And his will was the greatest she had ever seen. Now she just learned that her one true love was less than an ant compared to Princess Kagaya. As was every god on Olympus. What a sobering thought. It made sense when she thought about it. In the world she was in currently, humans were insignificantly weak. They could practically be sneezed away. It only made sense that the ratio would hold true in a world where humans could fight on par with gods of this world. She had much to think about. Naruto had taken care of the lion problem by simply knocking the beast out with a punch and using a transformation jutsu to change the large animal into a small kitten. He would use Kurama's chakra to keep the transformation running, so the kitten would stay as such until Kurama deemed otherwise. Now the million-dollar question was how Kurama got the thing there in the first place. Meow. Mizo hissed at Kagaya, making the little girl go teary-eyed. Naruto bopped the cat over the head, making it rethink its attempted socialization. Kagaya giggled at the blatant act of animal abuse and went to go pet the kitten again. Mizo obviously knew better at that point and allowed it to happen. She couldn't hurt him. He may have been turned into a small kid, but his skin was still thick like iron. Pain shot through Mizo's forehead as Kagaya pet the cat rather forcefully. This little girl would quite possibly kill Heracles all on her own if her strength was any indication. Mizo was about to strike with another bite but then looked over at his captor. The nine-tailed fox. Mizo was literally minding his own business when a giant nine-tailed fox, larger than mountains, picked it up in its mouth, shook him around for about an hour, dropped him onto the ground and stepped on him. The demon then taunted him for about an hour, shrunk itself to pocket size, beat him up a little more and dragged his ass to camp, completely bypassing the spell that was placed on the camp. Now he was learning that the Nine Tails wasn't even top dog. It was third in its chain of command. Would you name it Mizo? Naruto asked, genuinely curious. Because it goes with your name. You're Naruto and it's Mizo. Naruto laughed at the fox's humor. His godfather was never any good with names. Neither was his father for that matter. So when Jiraiya named his main character after Raymond Toping, Minato was completely on board. Not that he didn't like his name. He loved it. Naruto Uzumaki is the only name he would ever go by. He just thought it was poetic justice that he would be named after a piece of his favorite food. Naruto, where did you get that cat? Malcolm asked. Found it. Naruto said happily. Malcolm looked skeptical and was about to question Naruto further until he saw the gleam in the blonde's eye. Do you guys like orange? Hades sat on his throne next to his wife Persephone. It would seem the chess pieces were all set in this game called Destiny. Sitting on the ground across from Hades was a man with red hair and silver glowing eyes. The young man was powerful, even more powerful than him. He knew this because the young man had escaped purgatory by simply walking out of it. Something he'd never seen before. Now the young man had told him that he was going to be needed in something important. His helm of darkness had recently been stolen. As was Zeus's master bolt. Now the godlike man was telling him that these things mattered very little compared to the coming events. He would get his helm of darkness back soon, and his baby brother Zeus would get his bolt back as well. But what was going to happen in the next few years took precedence over everything else. He would have sent the red-haired man to Tartarus if he could, but it seemed his control over this incredibly powerful soul was non-existent. This frightened him. What's your name? Hades asked. He tried to keep calm and secure because he didn't want his wife to be scared. Persephone was clenching onto her throne seat. Unable to figure out what to do. Her husband would protect her, she knew this. But the man radiated a colossal amount of power and she was unsure how her beloved husband would fare against the man. You guys can relax. I didn't come here for anything bad. I'm on your guys' side. I wouldn't have told you all that stuff if I wasn't. The man said, attempting to calm the situation. He was failing miserably. The name's Nagato Uzumaki. And I'm here asking for help. What help would you need from us? Hades said monotonously. I need your help in getting the attention of one Naruto Uzumaki. Capture the flag. An interesting game to say the least. Naruto didn't quite know the rules. But he did know it involved violence, something Naruto was incredibly gifted at. He couldn't think of anybody better than him at it. Apparently he was on the team that was lauded to win. That should have made things easier. But something happened which would screw both teams over terribly. Its name was Kagaya. She, which Naruto was now 100% sure of, was mentally stunted it seemed. His limited experience with children might not amount to much, but when he was 6, he was pulling pranks. A proud moment in his life which he didn't regret in the slightest. Princess Kagaya, however, still required aid in eating. She saw a cartoon just recently on one of the campers' iPod classics and she was completely enthralled by the violence. She seemed to be growing up to be rather sadistic. So when she got happy from seeing some Tom fellow be completely curb-stomped by another smaller fellow that went by the name of Jerry, Naruto became the ultimate enabler. So that's the plan. Any questions? Naruto raised his hand like a small child, waiting for the teacher to call upon him. He sat with his legs crossed and one hand in his lap, the other reaching out high into the air in hopes of getting Annabeth's attention. Anybody at all? Annabeth asked, blatantly ignoring Naruto's hand. PSST. Ooh. Over here. Naruto shouted, raising his hand even higher into the sky in hopes of getting Annabeth to notice. I think Naruto has a question. Luke made notice of Naruto. What a true friend. Wow, did Naruto like this guy? He sort of reminded him of Sasuke, but nicer. He wondered why. Annabeth took a deep breath in, then released it. She hoped this plan wouldn't be ruined by her idiot brother. What is it? Over here. Oh. Was he mocking her? Yes, Naruto? She asked again much louder. He seemed to have lost interest at this point, only keeping his hand up because he didn't know where else to put it. He had his eyes following a little ant on the floor. How an ant had distracted him so thoroughly was anyone's guess. Naruto, ask your stupid question. Annabeth lost her temper at that point. Everyone stared at her in shock. She blushed. Oh. I have a question. Naruto said simply. Any more of this and Annabeth was sure she would kill the blonde idiot. Yes, Naruto, what is it? Malcolm asked politely. It seemed Annabeth was in no condition to even communicate with Naruto at this point. Who God's poop? The first thought that went through Gaara's mind was why he was almost naked. He was wrapped in a blanket and was in nothing but a pair of cotton underwear. How interesting. Second thought, he felt a lot stronger than he had in a while. Ever since Shukaku left, his chakra had been. Shukaku? Gaara thought. The one and only squirt. I see I must ponder this revelation further. But first I must observe my current circumstances. Gaara thought simply. But old Gaara. Still being a nerd like usual. Now I remember back in my day. Gaara then silenced his mind for the moment. How quaint. Gaara removed himself from the safety of his blankets and removed his underwear. It was not his, so he wouldn't trust it. He began to wander around what he assumed was a small island. It marveled him. Especially the sandy beaches. They were simply spectacular. He was glad he was able to feel the fresh breeze of the island swishing through his hair. He was in heaven. Unless this was the eternal Tsukiyomi. If it was, however, there was absolutely nothing he could do about it but enjoy it until Naruto fixed everything. But then. Why was Shukaku here? Love you too, asshole. Just to think I brought you back from the dead only to get treated like scum. I didn't sign up for this. Shukaku shouted angrily. I apologize. Say it like you mean it. You apologize. You just turn it around. Like a Ferris wheel in the summer's breeze. Stop being stupid. The conversation was stopped, however, when the two of them felt a presence behind them. Gaara remained calm, however. I see you're up and about. Came a voice from behind him. If Gaara was shocked, he didn't show it. He simply turned around without a care in the world and stared icily at the woman behind him. She had cinnamon-colored hair and dark almond eyes. Her facial features were soft and her beauty was further enhanced by the slight blush that adorned her cheeks. Who are you? Gaara asked. Except it didn't really sound like he was asking. One could almost compare it to an order. She flinched at his cold tone. I saved you when you washed up on my beach. She explained. I'm Calypso. She looked at him, hoping for him to respond. All she got was a nod and he turned back around and began to walk off. Wait. Gaara stopped and turned again. He didn't seem even slightly embarrassed at the fact that his manhood was out in the open for anyone to see. He just stared at her, his eyes digging into her soul. This unnerved her and seemed to slice her confidence in half. What is it? He asked, ordered. What's your name? Calypso asked. Gaara. He said simply. The conversation seemed all but lost. Who is in charge of this island, might I ask? Gaara asked. She was slightly shocked at his. Now. Involvement in the conversation. That would be me. She told him. He nodded his head in understanding. I see. He said simply. He turned around and looked out at the ocean. Do you wish to leave? She asked. Her heart didn't ache like it did when other heroes had washed up on the island. She tended to get to know them. This Gaara fellow seemed to be quite the cold person. She was almost glad he was leaving. No, he said simply. He turned to her. I shall be taking this island for myself. I apologize if this inconveniences you. That's my boy. Eh? Herb stomp. The only word that could properly describe what had just happened during this round of capture the flag. Unfortunately for Annabeth, her team had lost. And it was all thanks to Naruto. Everything was going swimmingly. Naruto was obviously their best fighter. If him beating Clarisse like a god would defeat an ant was any indication. Clarisse most definitely wouldn't be going in for seconds against someone like him, so Annabeth couldn't use him as a distraction. So he took her with him. Percy would make for a great distraction. How could they lose? It was all due to Naruto's idiocy. Naruto was a naturally curious fellow. Almost like a dog. When he saw something new, say for example, some kind of potion bottle he'd never seen before and had no idea what the effects could be. Naturally he would have to sample it. It wouldn't make sense not to. A girl from Aphrodite's cabin had dropped it while hiding. But when she hid behind a tree, her heart had sunk. If anyone found out she had that potion, it was very possible she would be in trouble. Hey you guys. Look, I found a potion. Naruto said excitedly. Leave it, Naruto. Annabeth ordered. She was getting more and more annoyed as time went on. Everyone heard a gulp, including the Aphrodite girl hiding behind the tree, too afraid to act. It tastes like ramen. That is where everything went downhill. Naruto. Defeat a team. Came a shout behind the tree. Everyone drew their swords, ready for an ambush, only for one not to come. They turned to Naruto, who at this point was hunched over. Annabeth pointed her sword at Naruto. Naruto, can you hear me? She asked. Those were the only words that came out of her mouth because right after, she had been punched in the face and lost consciousness. It took all of 10 minutes for a team to lose and for Naruto to grab his own flag and bring it to the other side. Calypso had been captured by the very sand that had just previously laid on her beaches. Her island had betrayed her in favor of a human boy. Well, human didn't seem to be the best description word when describing the redhead. She'd never seen hair so crimson before. It was as if he had drenched his hair in blood. He was obviously incredibly powerful. If the sand thing was any indication. And he didn't act very human. She thought. She couldn't quite peg how the boy acted. At one moment he was capturing her in sand and now, well, still captured, he was apologizing profusely. But it didn't sound like an apology at all. "Forgive me," he said, bowing once again. She struggled against the sand, holding her in place. "Release me, human," she screamed. "As you wish." He released her immediately. "Do with me as you wish." It should have sounded sincere, but it came off as more of an order. "How dare." She was wrapped up in sand once again. "This island belongs to me," he said, staring at her coldly. She was shocked yet again. Was he bipolar? His eyes widened a fraction of an inch and then he lowered his head in shame once again. "I apologize once again. I'm not normally like this." "Ha ha ha ha. I'm back, bitches. You haven't been with me for so long, you've almost completely forgotten how to keep me in check," Shukaku stated simply. Gaara released her once again and now she was more careful with how she worded things. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, taking a step back. "It seems I will need to retrain." Gaara thought to the beast residing inside of him. "I missed you too, old buddy. I apologize, I hold no ill will toward you or this island. Would you believe me if I were to tell you that I have a one-tailed demon completely made out of sand that sometimes influences my choices and decisions?" he asked. "EHHH. Do forward, Gaara, I must try and be more subtle." He spoke to himself. She didn't know what to say. Gaara thought about a way to defuse the silence, the only way he knew how. Gaara held his hand out toward the woman and closed his hand. "Here. Have a piece of candy," he said icily. Sand grabbed her arm, shocking her as he dropped the hard candy into her now open hand. Now she was really confused. But one thing was for sure. For however long he planned to stay on the island, things wouldn't be boring. Naruto sat in his bed, shame marring his face as he watched Kagaya play with Mizo. Rather roughly if anyone were to ask. "Hey brat. I've got good news." Kurama had appeared. "I've betrayed them," Naruto said simply. "To capture the flag game. What a ride. Hahaha. That's my boy," Kurama said happily. "I must get my revenge," Naruto shouted, jumping on his bed. The only person in the room currently was Annabeth and she had enough of his antics. "Sit down, you buffoon," she shouted angrily. "Don't worry, Annabeth. I shall fix this. I put it on my Nindo." "You've already done enough," she shouted. "You'll see." Naruto ignored her. He was really good at that, it seemed. "Where is everything?" Aphrodite's cabin seemed to be no more. Everything that was once beautiful about their cabin was painted green and brown. All the designer clothes had been replaced by what they assumed was green jumpsuits. Their beds had disappeared and were replaced with shoeboxes with blankets on top. "Who did this?" the head counselor for that cabin shouted. The large crowd had formed to see what had happened. Annabeth looked at Naruto and plastered on his face was a grin that could only be described as shit-eating. The gods had been called to Olympus, reason being that war was brewing. A war that would determine the future of the world. All started by childish finger-pointing. But what is war without people acting like small children? Athena was having her own childish quarreling with a nine-tailed demon fox. One that she had no hopes of winning. Not because of her lack of intelligence, but because Kurama was an asshole. "Don't think yourself superior, Nine Tails, you will answer my questions," Athena thought as calmly as she possibly could. "Oof, lady's going to cry." "Ha ha ha ha," Kurama replied inside of her mind. "I will not cry." Her face was going red as she tried to hide her emotions from the gods that sat all around her. Hopefully no one would notice. "Kushina-chan, look at you. You're at tsundere through and through. Wow, are you angry?" "I'm not," she screamed. All gods had eyes on her, staring at her in confusion. She blushed, embarrassed by her outburst. "Why won't you just simply answer my question?" she asked. "I'll think about it over lunch, ha. I swear, Kyuubi, if you." "I." Kurama's voice then disappeared. "Foolish Nine Tails. Don't you dare ignore me." Destiny, apparently that was a thing here too. Except this time it actually had tangibility and wasn't some vague thing people could invoke upon others, like the wrath of God or "No, Naruto, you're not allowed to eat the ramen because there's too much sodium in your bloodstream. You could die." What a bunch of crap. Naruto now stood in front of the corpse of what he was sure was called the Oracle of Delphi. He knew she was dead because he was pretty sure he killed her. Somehow. He had a dream the night prior which held Nagato in it. They had ramen and Nagato then told him that it wasn't a dream but a vision. That's exactly what a dream would say, so Naruto wasn't very inclined to believe him. So Nagato proposed a challenge. If Naruto could beat him in a game of rock paper scissors, then Nagato would concede it was a dream, but if Naruto lost, then he would be forced to listen to what Nagato had to say. Renegade seemed to be much more efficient than crossing your fingers to be lucky. After Naruto's almost embarrassing defeat, he asked for a rematch, which was quickly declined. Best 2 out of 3 could open up a can of worms nobody wanted to deal with. Nagato then told him that he would need to find an important artifact that he was not at the liberty of disclosing at the time. All he could tell him that in the wrong hands, it could be detrimental to the future of this entire world and any hopes of it ever attaining true peace. Naruto nodded his and went to sleep, unwilling to continue in any other kind of conversation at the time due to the fact that he had to get some Zs or he would be cranky. The next day he woke up early and made sure to brush his teeth while giving Kagaya a bath in a nearby river. She was very adamant that she wouldn't have anything to do with the word bath, so it soon became quite the challenge. Especially considering the fact that she literally commanded everything around her still. Which he was only then just learning. And the water refused to touch her, Naruto assuming that it feared for its own life. But Naruto soon made it clear that if she didn't take a bath, he would leave her for parts unknown. A child's worst fear. When he got back, camp had already resumed with camp-type activities and people were basically ignoring him. On a side note, Percy was about to go on a quest. Which was always fun. Now he just had to convince Percy to take him with because he would probably get in trouble, considering he broke the rules, resulting in the early passing of the Oracle of Delphi. He snuck in to see if there was some kind of fine print that could get Percy to consider taking him as well. It wasn't too hard to sneak in, but he was pretty sure you weren't supposed to. When he entered, he saw a dead body. Percy was going to be in so much trouble when Chiron found out. But then something surprising happened. The corpse came to life, surrounded by a green mist. Naruto reacted. Whatever oracle that had remained inside of that corpse was obliterated after being hit by a truth-seeking ball shaped into a fist that Naruto pulled out on instinct. He usually went for his trump when he was surprised. It just so happened that he went straight for the technique that negated all others. The body fell back down onto the ground with a thud to never rise again. Naruto then responded by escaping out of the window that he had entered through prior. He was in for it now. Gangster. A term that would generally make B laugh. Gangsters in Kumo were small, weak and boring. They were ineffective in everything they did. The very term gangster in Kumo was basically an insult. Now things were different. The shoe was on the other foot. Now he had a culture that could truly understand his artistic ability. He could share his talents with the whole world now. He was an artist. He just needed to fit in and meld in with the group. Step 1, learn the language. What's up with you young blood? Interesting start. Just sitting here in this stool. Better listen up you fool. He seemed to be off to a good start. AFCK. So cussing was a form of bonding among the people. What an interesting culture. Straight up son. My rhymes so fresh they weigh F king ton. It was happening. Assimilation. What's up with us Nae? A man asked. He was surrounded by the locals at this point. Many wearing very interesting and eye-catching clothing. Some of the clothes hung loosely on their body. Possibly a form of status. Or comfort. He was unsure, he would have to investigate further. Let's teach this BTCH a lesson. One man said, pulling out some kind of contraption from his waistband. It seemed these people were getting slightly agitated by his presence. He was unsure how he should react. He didn't want to startle them too much. He was supposed to assimilate after all. At top rain my nae. One man said smiling. The others around him began to laugh as if he told a joke in which everyone could relate to. A projectile came out hitting B right between the eyes. It was as if a bee had stung him, but he was very unresponsive so as to not frighten them any more than he already had. He slowly wiped off the bit of lead that remained on his forehead, allowing the bit of metal to fall on the floor harmlessly. The man froze up in fear, as did many of those around him. Pillar B had many things to learn from this unique and interesting culture, but he believed he was off to a pretty good start. Naruto was currently being chewed out by his younger cabin mate Annabeth. Apparently sneaking on a quest was a big no-no. But he didn't know of any other way to go around it. It was either sneak in or abduct them and hide them away so he could go on the quest on his own because he wasn't about to wait around at camp anymore. But that wasn't the worst part. Apparently the worst decision he made was taking Kagaya along. He didn't know what they were complaining about. She was relatively safe. And this would be good experience for all the ass whooping she would be doing in the future. But apparently that was irresponsible and the stupidest decision he'd made so far. And other crap he was only half listening to. Besides, what did she know? She wasn't even that old. She's only 10. I'm 12. He was thinking out loud again. A great way to get in trouble. Look. I don't know what the problem is. If we see a monster, I'll just beat its ass and we'll be on our merry way. Naruto shouted confidently. Nodo. Kagaya said aloud trying to regain the attention of her older brother. She was learning her words now. Next she would learn how to say ramen. What's up princess? Wah. She replied. See? Princess thinks it'll be a good idea. Naruto bartered. Is 5 unlucky? Percy asked. It doesn't matter. Wow, you're loud. Naruto shouted back, rubbing his ear. At this point, Annabeth's face had turned red in rage. Things were getting stupid at this point. Naruto reached into his pocket, pulling out a piece of candy, and handed it to the young Kagaya who squealed in approval. "You guys want any?" Naruto asked. They were in a Greyhound currently and Naruto had caught up on foot and jumped through an open window so quickly, nobody even noticed. "There's nothing we can really do, Annabeth." Grover attempted to mediate. She breathed out a sigh, trying to calm herself down. It didn't work. "Can you at least?" Thump, she lost consciousness immediately with a well-placed tap to her neck via Naruto finger's poke. "Thanks dude." Percy thanked. "Don't worry Percy. You'll warm up to her." Naruto reassured. "No. See even Kagaya thinks so." Naruto said happily. X. Gaara sat across Kurama in the sand, Calypso sitting next to him. They had just finished discussing where they were. Calypso would have explained, but the moment she went to open her mouth, Kurama bit her. Kurama had transformed from a monstrous force of nature into a little asshole. It suited him well. Calypso dare not get involved or risk losing a finger. "He's going through a thing." Kurama spoke. "What do you mean?" "You know how Naruto's an idiot, right?" Kurama asked. "Yes. Well, he's gotten dumber." "Escapism?" Gaara asked. "That's a thing." "Wow. Well anyway, we're going to need your help pretty soon." "I'm not leaving," Gaara said firmly. Gaara was always a scary guy, no effort needed to be made to make Kurama sweat a little in nervousness. "Not like that. But we may need to use this island in the future." "Is this alright with you Calypso?" Gaara asked. Calypso looked confused. How were they going to utilize an island that could never be found? "Take it as a yes and hold this." Kurama then proceeded to throw up on the floor, disgusting Calypso immediately. "That's disgusting." "Shut up. I'm a fox. That's what we do." In the pool of bile was a kunai with 3 prongs on the top. "The Harishin?" Gaara asked. "Yup. I'll see what we can do." Kurama gave the man a wink and disappeared in a poof of red. "My apologies Calypso. Kurama is quite rude." "More like misunderstood," Gaara said simply. Gaara got up began to walk away from the still-seated woman. "I shall head to bed, wake me if you need me." Nagato sat atop Hades' throne enjoying the comfort of such a warm chair. He didn't quite understand what there really was to complain about in the underworld to be perfectly honest. It was dark, but very well decorated. It was like an incredibly surreal castle or something along those lines. And there was just company for miles. If company could be described as dead souls that didn't seem to have an interest in even a slight amount of conversation. On second thought, he could see a little of what Hades was complaining about. Sitting in front of him, nervously drinking tea was an incredibly frightened Sally Jackson. Nagato, being the eternal gentleman that he was, had her sit on the ground. Because that's what gentlemen did. Well, he couldn't simply offer her a seat. He had already situated himself and if he moved too much, he would take hours trying to find that perfect spot again. So Nagato started. He closed his mouth after a second and opened it again in hopes of starting up a conversation. But his mouth soon fell shut after not being able to find a topic that would really fit the mood. At one point, he was doing a decent impression of a goldfish. "Nice place down here don't you think?" Nagato asked. "I want to see me son." Sally responded. This took Nagato by surprise for a moment, but he soon got over the initial shock and thought over her request. "Not the greatest ideas currently, but rest assured, your son is in capable hands." "How can you be so positive?" Her face had scrunched up in anger, and her glare could quite possibly have burned a hole through his head if she were to somehow acquire super eye lasers that function through one's anger. Fortunately that was not the case. "Naruto's with him." Nagato answered, hoping that was the end of any follow-up questions. It was not. "My son is out there risking his life, and your answer is Naruto's with him." Now that I think about it, if you don't know Naruto, then you can't really understand why most people would feel relieved after hearing that. "Well, excuse me for not having faith in some kid when there are literally gods trying to kill my son." "You've met him before though." "And when was this?" "You hit him with a car." Nagato smirked. "Hook, line and sinker." Sally's eyes widened and she recalled hitting a boy when trying to deliver her son to Camp Half-Blood. She was so worried about her son's safety, she barely registered the boy she hit going over 80. "Now that you're calm, let me tell you a little something about Naruto." Nagato stopped. "He's stupid," Nagato started. "Very relieving information. He's so stupid that he can barely read and doesn't have clue on how to do even the most basic of math." He continued. "How is this supposed to make me feel better? He's so dumb, he thinks wearing colorful and obnoxious clothing is cool and people will like him more wearing bright orange rather than literally anything else. Even though this is incredibly far from the truth." He had the lowest grades in his entire class and thought that was pretty good. Nothing you're saying is. His idiocy is so far-reaching that when everyone he cared about was killed right behind his back, he went straight up to the god who was responsible and told him to stop, like that was how you were supposed to stop a god. Sally's lips were sealed at this point. But he can read what he needs to and hasn't had to use a single math equation in his entire life. His clothes are still disgusting, but people still like him, so it doesn't really matter what he wears. Even though he got the lowest grades in his class, at the end of the day, every one of his classmates looked up to him instead of the other way around. And when he walked up to that god, he was so sure he was right that he even convinced a god to not only stop what he was doing, but to bring back all the people he had killed with a smile on his face. Naruto did all that with just words, Nagato explained. Now what if I were to tell you, he's better with his fists? Hades looked across from the McDonald's he was currently in, trying to make sense of what was currently going on right now. His wife sat beside him, drinking coffee. On his tray was a Big Mac with fries. He was looking for someone. Nagato had told him that he had an informant that would be here momentarily and that it would be best to look as integrated as he possibly could or things could go south quite quickly. He took this warning to heart, knowing that anyone who was associated with Nagato was not someone you should mess with under any circumstances. His wife seemed to be on edge as well, due to the combination of not only not being able to go and see her mother, but being stuck in such a negative situation in the first place. But the bitter taste of coffee seemed to calm her nerves momentarily. It happened incredibly quickly. Everyone in the McDonald's had fallen face first into their food, completely unconscious. Persephone, not being used to these kinds of situations, promptly dropped her coffee onto the ground, getting it everywhere. Hades felt a chill go up his spine. Then it happened. He saw himself, as if looking from a third-person perspective. He saw himself sitting next to his wife, who didn't seem to notice due to the fact she was looking at something he couldn't make out. Her face read terror. Hades then noticed something incredibly odd. He didn't seem to be alive. He came to this conclusion because it looked as if his body had been turned into a pincushion that's sole purpose was to hold swords of various sizes. His body was slumped over and he most definitely wasn't showing signs of life. Then things turned back to normal almost instantly. Hades had jumped in fright, slightly shocking his already terrified wife. He heard the door opened and turned to look at who entered. There stood the silhouette of a man who seemed to hold himself quite powerfully. Persephone and Hades were stunned. This man was who they were supposed to meet. This man made Nagato seem like a small child in comparison. The man soon moved away from the door and the silhouette of him turned from intimidating black monster of death to man with black hair, black eyes and a finger in his nose. It seemed the man was looking for gold or his brain itched and he was attempting to scratch it. His finger soon left his nose with a satisfying pop. A glob of greed booger stuck to the tip of his pointer finger as he looked at it expressionlessly. He wiped it on a nearby man who was recently sharing a happy meal with his young daughter. "Sup," he said nonchalantly. If Hades wasn't so disappointed at the fact that this monster was so uninterested and underwhelming, he would have laughed. Hip and cool jumped into his mind rather quickly, frightening him that he would even use such silly terminology to describe someone. Hello. Persephone started. She stood up as did Hades and walked over to go and shake his hand. Before she could get through her first step however, the man had disappeared. She jumped in shock. Hades could feel breathing on his neck. The man was right behind him. Their informant then disappeared again for a moment. They had no idea where he went, but when he came back, he had a tomato in his hand. He took a bite out of it and began to chew. While the food was still in his mouth, he introduced himself. Named Sasuke. The only thing Naruto could think about currently was how hard it was to move when made of stone. He didn't like it, not even a little. Kurama wasn't helping much either. Kurama sat atop Naruto's head laughing at the young man's current predicament. He also seemed to be setting up failure for his current adventure buddies by tripping them with chakra arms. Naruto would have probably tried to reverse the effects of being a statue if it weren't for the fact that he was in a pickle. He couldn't understand why Auntie M would turn him to stone like that. She seemed so nice, even feeding them delicious food product. Was it something that he had said? But that wouldn't make any sense, he was such a nice guy. He could sense her anger the moment he walked in with company, but he had brushed it off as angry old lady syndrome. She was making them food, so why did it matter? In hindsight, she could have been poisoning them, but that thought hadn't crossed his mind. "Look at Kagaya-chan." Kurama shouted in glee. It seemed while the Annabeth, Grover and Percy were fighting off Auntie M, Kagaya had decided all the commotion was above her and continued to nibble on her burger that was graciously given to her prior. She still sat on his lap, completely content with what was going on, and Naruto didn't have the heart. Nor the capability. To tell her to stop eating and run. She just seemed so happy. Maybe I should go bite Percy's ankles. Kurama exclaimed, disappearing in a flash of orange, leaving both Naruto and Kagaya alone. Kurama now sat atop Percy's shoulder, frightening the young boy. He almost fell out of his hiding spot. "Sup kid?" Kurama greeted. "Shhhhhh," Percy shushed. "Why?" Kurama asked. Annabeth tried to make a blind attack at Auntie M, only for a hand of chakra to stop her and drag her away before the ugly woman could notice. He muffled her mouth with another hand of chakra. He silently maneuvered her over to their hiding spot. "What are you doing, Fox? That thing just killed your master," Percy hissed. "Don't worry about it. Watch," Kurama exclaimed. At that moment, their position had been compromised. My, I've never would have thought I would meet a talking fox. And a stupid one to boot," Medusa said, stalking over to their spot behind a bit of concrete. "Naruto will save us," Kurama shouted, a foxy grin threatening to split his face. "That boy? Ha! That bastard son of Athena is already dead," she exclaimed in mock joy. "Shows how much you know, cause he's already escaped." Medusa would have laughed if it wasn't muffled by a hand grabbing her face and lifting her off of the ground. Her snake-like hair trying to bite away the appendage. "See you guys. You should trust me more often," Kurama boasted. Percy and a now free Annabeth looked out from behind their hiding spot only to see Naruto holding Medusa by her face. He looked calm, almost uncharacteristically calm if you were to ask any of them. "So what's your story?" Naruto asked more to himself than anything. He threw her into a wall and cracked his neck, getting ready for a fist fight. "Better, Naruto," Annabeth shouted. Naruto smirked, standing in front of the slowly rising Auntie M. She looked up, her eyes going wide and her snake hair all glaring at him. Naruto didn't react, shocking her. He wasn't turning into stone. "Why? What are you?" she shrieked. Naruto didn't respond. His face seemed to be getting more and more excited. He reached his hand out and beckoned her to come. "If you really hate me, then show me," Naruto said calmly. "Ah!" she charged, her snakes hissing in chorus. She got into his personal space and went for a half slap half scratch, only for him to grab her wrist and knee her in the stomach. Saliva flew from her mouth as he grabbed her snake hair, throwing her away. He walked over to her as she got up again. She would kill him. She went low this time, attempting to tackle him to the ground. He responded by quickly picking up his leg and slamming on her head, smashing her to the ground. The concrete cracked under the pressure. Blood spilled from her head wound as she tried to pick herself up again. Naruto picked her up the rest of the way and gave her 2 quick punches to the face, spilling blood everywhere, grabbed her by her shirt and head-butted her. She went to fall, but Naruto hadn't let go. He swung her behind him into another wall and began to beat her relentlessly. Every swing of his fists led him closer and closer to the story he was looking for. She had a lot of hate in her heart and it completely ran her life. She had nothing but rage toward all others, especially toward his supposed mother. Naruto let up as her legs began to wobble. But she wouldn't fall. "Why? Naruto. Kill her," Annabeth screamed. Naruto grabbed her shirt and lifted her off the ground the same way a bully would pick up a small child. He looked up at her, staring into her dead fish-like eyes. "Why won't you kill me?" she croaked out. What Naruto did next shocked everyone. He lowered her onto the ground and used his other hand to cover her face with it. The sun seal that was placed there activated. The snakes that once lay atop her head crumbled away, leaving long black silken hair. Her skin began to revitalize itself and regain its lost color. The wrinkles that marred her face began to recede and disappear. Her once dead eyes went from lifeless black to bright green. The bruises and broken bones that Naruto had given her had also healed. He then released her. She looked at Naruto, her face red shock. Tears began to well up in her eyes as Naruto got on his knees and kowtowed. "I'm sorry," Naruto said, head low. What?" She felt her face. She couldn't remember the last time it was so smooth. He got up right after his apology, not feeling comfortable being in that position any longer. "Any hatred you still have for anyone, just put it on my shoulders. Trust me. I can handle anything," Naruto said with a cheeky grin. She leaped at him, bringing him into a tight hug. "See?" Kurama shouted exuberantly. All Annabeth and Percy could do was stare in shock. Annabeth coming to the conclusion that while not smart, Naruto wasn't someone anyone should ever go up against, and Percy coming to the conclusion that well, it didn't really impact him all that much. It was cool, he guessed. "Now where's Grover?" Percy asked. Kurama looked sheepish at this point. Flashback. "Ow. You stepped on my tails, you ass." Grover would not remember this altercation due to the fact he had been slammed head first into the ground by Kurama's chakra arms. But he shall always wonder why he feared such a tiny fox in all future altercations. What if Naruto and Kaguya Percy Jackson end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.